keep growing. Now, I got a special guest for all of you. He's the insurance commissioner in the state of Georgia, but he's more than just the insurance commissioner in the state of Georgia. He's got quite the background, including being a graduate of the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, where he spent time in Israel with Israeli law enforcement and has some insight into how they keep their community safe, particularly given what's going on. So, welcome to Commissioner John King. How are you?
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you and your audience.
You're like the Renaissance man. You've been in the military. You got a police training. You've been to Israel. You're the insurance commissioner. This is why I like you. You're always full of surprises.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm passionate about this subject. I remember my first deployment for Desert Storm. And me and my fellow National Guardsmen were getting ready to go to combat. And this had been a very long time since the United States military had gone to a major deployment like this. And then I heard the news of Israel being attacked by Scud missiles. And the Iraqis, because the Israelis were our allies, shot 42 Scud missiles. And if you have no idea what a Scud missile is, this is a gigantic missile. And the Israelis, they suffered immensely for being our friends. Mm-hmm. And that made an impression on me. I mean, the United States would have not have taken that kind of attack quietly. And the fact that they are being pressured to hold back, there's no way the Americans would stand for our country and our government to be patient like they have. And it's just they have to defend and protect their communities because they have an existential threat against their citizens.
Now, talk to me a little bit what it's like, because Israel it's more complicated in a lot of ways, obviously, but also within Israel, you do have a Jewish and an Arab population that do largely coexist peacefully, excluding Hamas and Palestine, just in Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs, and that makes policing over there. I've got to imagine, like in this country, we have races that you can largely tell apart, and there you don't necessarily know who the Arab and who the Jew is a lot of times, and yet you've got these police forces that have to deal with these situations.
Well, thank you. What is incredibly different about the Israelis is their police officers, their military are very well represented with Arab Israelis, Christian, Druze, are all very well represented. One of the police chiefs one of the stations, Sarat, that Hamas went and put all the police officers against the wall and killed 20 of those police officers. The chief of police was Muslim. And so that, most Americans don't recognize that this is a very diverse and inclusive nation, that people are represented. Automatically, they assume that everything is controlled by a Jewish leadership. And I would tell you, I would disagree with that. It's just they're very well represented. Some of the most effective units are led by, they have a love for their nation.
Yeah, one of the striking stories that came out of October 7th was from one family where the parents were killed and the son, they're Israeli Arabs, and son says that his dad told them that they were Arab, they weren't Jew, and Hamas replied, "You're still Israeli," and killed them.
Exactly. That is the viciousness of this attack. And Hamas is a terrorist organization, no different than ISIS, no different than any other organization that I've spent a good portion of my adult life fighting, to protect this nation.
Yeah, you're looking at the lay of the land there. You've got the military endeavor obviously going into Gaza, but the police in Israel, as you mentioned, most of them obviously have military backgrounds because of compulsory service there, but I got to imagine policing the streets of Israel is far different from policing the streets of Atlanta, given the situation.
It's slightly different, because people, the idea of seeing people carrying firearms is very routine there, because, the nation, they have a, national compulsory, service. But the officers are incredibly well trained, and they spend a lot of time on being culturally aware. They understand that they're in a very diverse environment, and they have to be respectful of the culture, of the religion. Imagine trying to be a police officer in Jerusalem, with all the major religions basically coming and clashing and having conflicts and disagreements. And these police officers have to navigate the sensitivity and still maintain their composure and their safety.
Yeah, it's a remarkable environment. So let me ask you, step back a little bit, and this is slightly outside of your wheelhouse, and so I'm going to apologize in advance. But this state that we're in, Georgia, has really good relationships with Israel. In fact, Governor Kemp, I guess, had a big trade trip over there last year, and I've got to imagine that just even at the governmental levels from your office and others, there is a connection, a level of support to be offered to the Israelis.
Absolutely. We've had a relationship with Israeli law enforcement agencies for 30 years in this state. We've exchanged, we've gone to Israel. Israelis have come to learn from us. Some of their, for example, bomb techs, their bomb technicians have worked and trained with our state agencies. And that's why our capabilities in this state are second to none. And so we have a very close relationship. Major police chiefs and sheriffs have gone there and learned a great deal, especially how do you police in a community in the middle of a conflict zone that is a democratic society. It's the only nation in that part of the world that is truly democratic, and they're in the middle of a conflict zone.
Yeah, it makes it tough. If you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Commissioner John King. He's the insurance commissioner in Georgia, but he's got a military and law enforcement background. And then I guess, now that I've expanded my audience outside of Georgia, I should talk to you about that a little bit, because you do have a military background and a police background, and were appointed into the insurance commissioner position by the governor, Brian Kemp, here in Georgia, ran successfully for it, are now the elected insurance commissioner. But I mean, can you talk a little bit just about your military and police background, so people understand that I'm not just having a random person on the radio. You actually know what you're talking about here.
Well, thank you. I just recently retired from the military as a major general, and I've spent 42 years serving not only our great state of Georgia, but serving our nation as a military officer. I started as a young enlisted soldier in the Georgia Army National Guard and retired as a 2-star general about 4 months ago, and deployed all over the world, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, to a number of locations around the world. And so I'm, very humbled and privileged to have gotten this opportunity. That this opportunity doesn't occur anywhere else in the world. And of course, I started my career with the Atlanta Police Department, walking a footbeat on Auburn Avenue, working an anti-drug unit. And then had the privilege of serving the great city of Doraville, one of the most diverse communities in our state, as chief of police before the governor asked me to serve as the insurance commissioner.
I forgot you were also a police officer in the city of Atlanta. I totally forgot about that. So let me ask you now, with the police issues that we have in the state and crime, I mean, do you still have a perception that there are some communities in the state that maybe aren't as supportive of the police as they should be, and what that does to retention?
They're hard to find in Georgia. I think most Georgia communities recognize the incredible value and the incredible importance of a positive relationship with their police departments. Most chiefs, most mayors recognize that without public safety, a community is not going to thrive. And what happens when police, officers don't feel like they have the support of the community, they basically, will not do self-initiated calls. And my generation of police officers thrive on going and looking for problems to work with the community and fix. Now, unfortunately, with the current climate, a lot of police officers, a lot of leaders in law enforcement are concerned and are not willing to take any risks. So they'll sit in and get the free Wi-Fi at the coffee shop and wait for a call to be dispatched. And that is not a way to protect the community. And so luckily, the state leaders all the way from Governor Kemp all the way down to local leaders understand that we have to make sure that our police officers know that they have the backing of the community. Without that, nothing can happen.
Okay, so, I can tell you're not a professional politician because you actually finish your sentences, and there's a clear cue for me to actually ask you another question. I continue to be impressed by your willingness to actually finish the sentence instead of having me interrupt you.
Thank you.
Look, I got to leave it there. It's always my pleasure to talk to you. It hadn't seen you in a while, but it's always good to hear your voice.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. This is something that I'm passionate about.
Thank you so much. Commissioner John King, he's the insurance commissioner of Georgia, just retired as a general from the Army National Guard here in Georgia, has worked all over the world, including working with Israeli police over in – I like the guy so much. Glad to have him on. 877-9